Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. It's now time for Believe It or Not. Heath Cummings is going to give us a statement and then tell you if you should believe it or not. I'm Jamie. That's Heath. Chris Towers joins us now. Let's get right to it. Here we go with the first topic. Believe it or not. Let me find my notes. It's right here. James Conner is just a flex again.
I hated this one. I was so excited. I was hopeful that the Cardinals saw how good Conner was in the feature role, just like he was a couple years ago in Pittsburgh, and he would get to keep that role. Instead, we saw him with 8 carries, 2 targets, 44% snap share. It probably should have been closer to 50% if it hadn't been a blowout, but it's just a timeshare again between he and Chase Edmonds. I think they're both touchdown-dependent flexes. Now, he scored a lot early in the year. If he gets back to that touchdown rate, then he'll probably still be fine as a number 2 running back, but I view him as more of a flex.
Chris, if this game had gone differently and the Cardinals win by 13 or more, like the point spread suggested, and they were blowing out the Lions as opposed to getting the one of the biggest surprise losses, do you think we'd feel the same way? And James Conner was 100% healthy also going into the week, or is just the outcome telling us something different based on how this game unfolded?
Yeah, if you want to find a silver lining on that dark cloud, Conner did have a 26-15 edge in snaps prior to the fourth quarter, so a decent amount, about half of Chase Edmonds' snaps came in that fourth quarter. This was a weird game. Things didn't go at all how the Cardinals planned them. And yeah, Conner ended up playing 31 snaps, Edmonds 29. But if you look at the first 3 quarters, it was mostly Conner. So that's a reason to be optimistic. However, this was also Edmonds' first game back. So I'm not sure if that's the way things are going to go moving forward. Edmonds was playing more snaps earlier in the season. If you remember, the first 8 games of the season before Edmonds' injury, James Conner was averaging just 49.1 yards per game. He was still a top 20 running back because of all those touchdowns, but it was really asking a lot for him to keep scoring basically a touchdown per game. And if he wasn't finding the end zone, he was basically useless. So that's a big concern. I guess, part of the concern would also be that the Cardinals threw it 50 times and Conner had 2 targets. That does seem to be a real concern. I agree. He's probably just a flex or maybe a low-end RB2.
Yeah, we'll see how the rest of the games go for Week 15, but hopefully things are better for the Cardinals. They have a tough matchup this week against the Colts on Saturday, on Christmas Day, so we'll see how things go for their offense coming off a very, very brutal loss. Let's see if Twitter agrees with Heath here, who believes that James Conner is just a flex again, and Twitter does believe it. Got to have a lot of good running backs, though, to make sure he's only in your flex spot, but if that's the case, your team is probably in a pretty good spot. Now, let's go to the next one here. Believe it or not, Russel Gage is a legit must-start wide receiver.
I don't think anybody saw this, but Russel Gage is performing like a number 1 wide receiver. In fact, over the last 4 weeks, the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy was 75 fantasy points. Part of that's because Cooper Kupp hasn't played yet this week, but he's still been a top 12 wide receiver, absolutely. In the last couple weeks especially, he's doing it in such a different way. Had a 36-yard grab last week. He mossed 2 different defenders in this game, including one in the end zone. He's playing outside more. He's averaging 12 yards per catch. He's catching 80% of his targets. Russel Gage is a must-start wide receiver rest of the season.
Schedule is set up very nicely against a very beat-up 49ers secondary. Now gets the Lions in Week 16. So, Heath, Chris, do you agree with Heath that Russel Gage is a must-start wide receiver?
Yeah, to go back to the nobody saw this coming and just kind of put a finer point on it to highlight how far Russell Gage has come. In the first 3 seasons of his career from 2018 to 2020, 58 wide receivers had at least 190 targets. Gage ranked 58th in yards per target, yards per reception, and touchdown rate. The only player who was worse was Danny Amendola in all 3. But now Russell Gage is out here making contested catches, like he said. He's going up and fighting for for contested balls. He's averaging career bests off the board, across the board. He has a 27% target share over the last 3 games. And now he gets the Lions. Heck yeah, he's a must-start wide receiver.
Keep it going. It'd be nice to see if maybe Kyle Pitts can join the fun. But until Calvin Ridley comes back, if in fact he does come back this season, Russell Gage has really stepped up his game and clearly making the Falcons, I'm sure, very happy about moving on from Julio Jones, because now the receiving core, when everybody's there, looks like it could be pretty legit moving forward. Let's see what Twitter says. I'm sure they agree with you, Heath. And there you have it, 64.3%. Certainly agree. And if you have Russell Gage available, his roster percentage is 74%. 10-team leagues, whatever. You lose Chris Godwin, you might not have Mike Evans. Obviously, Russell Gage is in a great spot as a potential replacement option. Let's go now to the next topic here. Believe it or not, Tevin Coleman is the best Jets running back in Week 16 against the Jaguars. If you say believe it, I'm throwing you out of the room.
I was so sad when I said. I'm just still sad that he was the best Jets running back in Week 15.
Yep.
I don't understand. I don't believe it. I think that Michael Carter will see a bigger role, but they told us coming into this game that Michael Carter was going to have a big role. Then they made Ty Johnson inactive. Then they threw it to Michael Carter.
You got so excited yesterday.
I got excited about him and Devin Singletary. One of those worked out well. One of those worked out poorly. I'm just going to hope that this is another one of those situations, and we've seen it with a lot of running backs this year. First game back, they don't get quite as much work. Next game, it's better. But mostly, you probably just shouldn't start any Jets if you've made it to the semifinals.
It is the Jaguars, though. It is a very good situation. Hopefully, Michael Carter, like you said, is back as the lead guy. So, Chris, are you on board? Vegas is telling us a winnable game for the Jets against the Jaguars.
It's worth noting that Carter did play 55% of the snaps on Sunday to 37% for Coleman. So it's not like Coleman was the number one running back or anything. But I think the bigger question here is, does it really matter if Zach Wilson's the quarterback? Jets running backs are averaging 17.9 PPR points per game in the games that Zach Wilson has started and finished. That would be the fifth worst in the NFL. Yes, I know it's a great matchup against the Jaguars, but unless Carter's going to come out and play 70% of the snaps, dominate all the passing work, and get some goal line work, I'm just not sure either of these guys is going to be worth starting. I think Michael Carter is the better running back. I think he's the better fantasy player, but I don't know if he's going to rank inside of my top 24 running backs for next week.
It's just so frustrating because it was like, okay, we said this on Sunday. I don't really want to trust him against the Dolphins because the Dolphins' run defense is good. Let him get through this game, and then he gets Jacksonville, and then all things could be great for fantasy managers. But here we have a clouded situation once again. Let's see if Twitter agrees with you not to believe this one, and thankfully they do. Hopefully the Jets are watching and paying attention, so we'll mention this to Robert Saleh as well, that it should be Michael Carter taking on the Jaguars next week. Final Believe It or Not topic for today. Let's go. Here we go. Believe it or not, Amir Abdullah is a good flex in Week 16 against Tampa Bay.
This is the one where I get to disagree with everyone probably because I actually think it's true. This Tampa Bay defense has given up the fewest rushing yards to running backs on the season, just 61, but they give up the seventh most receiving yards to running backs, the second most receptions, and Amir Abdullah each of the last 3 weeks has outsnapped Chuba Hubbard. He's the clear passing downs running back. I think you should expect 4 or 5 catches, probably 30, 40 yards, and hopefully another touchdown.
He had 4 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown on only 4 targets against the Bills in a game where they were trailing, and so we anticipate them probably trailing once again. So, Chris, we could get a scenario. Matt Rule's talking today about he's meeting with the media as we're speaking right now about maybe Sam Darnold coming back. I think that's still a little bit of a long shot. But you do have Cam Newton, who we know is always hit or miss with throwing to his backs. Where do you come out at Amir Abdullah? Because clearly he's the safer of the two in this matchup against the Bucs. I'm comparing him to Hubbard, but do you believe this, that you can trust Amir Abdullah as a flex?
I would feel better about it if Sam Darnold were playing, and I actually think I would feel better about this offense as a whole if Sam Darnold were playing with the way Cam Newton's played since he came back. Except for the rushing ability, Cam Newton's been pretty disastrous as a passer. The problem with Abdullah is he hasn't topped 4 carries in his last 5 games. He's had just 4 targets in each of the past 2 games. And even though the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do funnel targets to running backs on defense, if Cam Newton's the starting quarterback, he's likely to take off and run when those plays break down rather than dump it off to his running back. So that's the situation that you're dealing with where, yeah, I think he could get 4 or 5 targets, but the idea of him getting like an 8 or 9 target game and having a really, really big game, I just don't think the upside is there for Abdullah. So if I'm looking at a flex, chances are there's a wide receiver with more upside on my bench.
Potentially so, but he could also be in the low-end number 2 running back conversation. Again, if you're trying to replace Leonard Fournette, maybe Joe Mixon. We'll find out some of the other running back concerns that fantasy managers are dealing with. Not a bad pivot play to Amir Abdullah based on what we just saw and probably what we will see as long as Christian McCaffrey remains out for the rest of the season, which he is because he is on IR. Let's show you the Twitter poll here in regards to this one. So they don't believe it either.
Not even a little.
Not even a little. But again, we'll see how the rest of the week goes, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the waiver wire options. Amir Abdullah, widely available, as you would imagine. Better in PPR, though, than non-PPR.